You won't believe what happened after this single dad, who most people just walked past without a second glance, pulled a Navy officer from the wreckage of a sinking jet. But to understand the full, incredible story, you have to start at the very beginning, with the storm. The wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping the rain into a stinging, horizontal fury. For Leo, the night custodian at the Coastal Research Facility, it was just another Thursday. He wiped a foggy patch on the massive window overlooking the storm-churned bay, his reflection a ghost in the glass, a tired man in his late 30s with kind eyes that had seen too much worry too soon. Inside his worn janitor's cart, tucked between the spray bottles and rags, was a slightly crumpled drawing of a rocket ship, signed in bright red crayon, "To the best dad. Love, Sammy." His 7-year-old son was his entire world. Since his wife, Clara, had lost her battle with cancer 2 years prior, their world had shrunk to a small, carefully managed universe of school, work, and cherished bedtime stories. This job, though humble, was their anchor. It paid the rent on their tiny apartment and, more importantly, had predictable hours, allowing him to be there for every school drop-off, every pickup, every nightmare. He was just about to refill the mop bucket when a sound, wrong and terrifying, cut through the storm's roar. It wasn't thunder. It was a high-pitched, tearing shriek, followed by a ground-shaking crump that vibrated through the very floor. Leo sprinted back to the window, his heart hammering against his ribs. Out in the blackness of the bay, a fireball briefly illuminated the lashing rain before being swallowed by the waves. A plane. It had to be. Without a second thought, protocols and job descriptions forgotten, Leo ran. He slammed through the facility's rear door, the wind nearly ripping it from his grasp. He scrambled down the slick, rocky path to the facility's private dock where a small, sturdy workboat was moored, bucking violently on its lines. Every rational thought screamed at him to call for help, to stay safe. But another thought, clear and sharp as a diamond, overrode them all. What if that was someone Sammy? What if someone was waiting for them to come home? He couldn't live with himself if he did nothing. Fighting the gale, his hands numb and bleeding, he untied the lines and gunned the engine, pointing the bow into the heart of the darkness. The boat pitched and rolled, icy water crashing over the sides, soaking him to the bone in seconds. He navigated by memory and the fading coordinates of the fireball, his eyes straining against the stinging rain. Then he saw it, a grotesque silhouette against the storm-lit sky, the tail section of a military jet, angling sharply into the hungry waves. And there, clinging to a piece of floating wreckage, was a figure. A man in a flight suit, one arm hanging limp, desperately trying to stay above the churning water. "Hold on," Leo screamed, his voice lost in the wind. He maneuvered the boat alongside, the hull groaning in protest as it scraped against debris. The pilot was barely conscious, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock and pain. Leo leaned over the side, the cold water sucking at his clothes, and with a strength he didn't know he possessed, he hauled the dead weight of the man into the boat. Back on solid ground, in the stark brightness of the facility's break room, Leo saw the man clearly. He was young, maybe late 20s, with a sharp, disciplined look even in his dazed state. The name tag on his flight suit read, LT. CMDR. Alex Reed. Leo worked efficiently, using the first aid kit to stem the bleeding from a deep gash on the officer's arm and wrapping him in emergency blankets. "Thank you," Alex rasped, his voice trembling from cold and adrenaline. His eyes, a startlingly clear blue, locked onto Leo's. You saved my life." "It's okay," Leo said softly, his fatherly instincts taking over. "You're safe now." He called 911, then, on autopilot, called his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gable, to check on a sleeping Sammy. As they waited for the paramedics, Alex's gaze fell on the crayon drawing, which had fallen from Leo's cart. "Your kid?" he asked, his voice a little stronger. Leo smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his tired face. "Yeah, that's my Sammy. He's 7. He's lucky," Alex said, a shadow crossing his face. "To have a dad like you." The paramedics arrived then, and in the controlled chaos of loading Alex onto a stretcher, the moment was broken. The lieutenant commander gripped Leo's hand one last time. "I owe you everything. I will find you. I promise." Leo just nodded, watching the ambulance lights disappear into the rainy night. He finished his shift on autopilot, the adrenaline crash leaving him hollow and exhausted. He went home, kissed his sleeping son's forehead, and collapsed into bed, the events of the night feeling like a strange, vivid dream. The next morning, the sun was shining, the storm a distant memory. Leo was making Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes while Sammy chattered excitedly about a new kid in his class. It was a perfect, normal Saturday morning. Then they heard it. A low, growing rumble that wasn't the usual neighborhood traffic. Sammy ran to the window. "Wow, Dad, look, army trucks." Leo's blood ran cold. He walked to the window, spatula still in hand, and his jaw went slack. Parked in a perfect row in front of their modest apartment building were 5 matte green Humvees. Soldiers in crisp uniforms stood at attention. And walking up the cracked concrete path, his arm in a sling but his posture ramrod straight, was Lieutenant CMDR Alex Reed. Behind him, a 4-star admiral, his uniform adorned with enough medals to tell a lifetime of stories. The entire building was peeking through blinds. Mrs. Gable was on her porch, her hand over her heart. Alex reached the door. Leo opened it, feeling small in his worn sweats and flour-dusted t-shirt. "Leo," Alex said, his voice formal but filled with emotion. "This is Admiral James Wright, commander of the Naval Air Forces." The admiral stepped forward, his eyes sweeping over the humble apartment, landing on Sammy, who was hiding behind Leo's legs, wide-eyed. Then his gaze returned to Leo, filled with a respect so profound it was humbling. "Mr. Evans," the admiral began, his voice deep and resonant. "Last night, you didn't just save one of my best pilots. You saved a man who is like a son to me. You risked your life without a moment's hesitation. The United States Navy does not forget that." He gestured, and a soldier stepped forward, holding a polished wooden case. Inside, on a bed of blue velvet, was the Navy and Marine Corps Medal, the highest non-combat decoration for heroism. But that wasn't the end of it. Alex then smiled, a real, warm smile that reached his eyes. "And a promise is a promise." He nodded to another soldier, who presented a large envelope. "This is a full, 4-year scholarship to the college of Sammy's choice, when the time comes. And this," he said, handing Leo a set of keys, "is for you. A fully funded, veteran-owned janitorial franchise. You're the boss now. No more night shifts. You build your own hours." Leo stood there, the weight of the metal box in one hand, the cool metal of the keys in the other. He looked down at Sammy, whose face was a mixture of confusion and awe. The challenges of being a single dad, the exhaustion, the constant fear of not providing enough, the loneliness, it all welled up in him and then broke, like the storm clouds from the night before. Tears he had been holding back for years streamed down his face. He hadn't done it for a reward. He had done it because it was right. Because in that dark, stormy bay, he had seen not a Navy officer, but a fellow human being. So, you see, this story is so much more than a rescue. It's a reminder that heroes don't always wear uniforms, sometimes they wear a janitor's keychain and have crayon drawings in their pocket. It's about how a single act of courage, born from a father's love, can change not just one life, but many. It's a testament to the fact that no matter how invisible you might feel, your actions have immense power. Alex became a permanent part of their lives, an honorary uncle to Sammy. Leo's new business thrived, allowing him to hire other people who needed a second chance. The story of the single dad janitor and the Navy officer became a local legend, a beacon of hope. If this story of courage, kindness, and the incredible ripple effect of one good deed moved you, if it reminded you that there is still good in this world, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel. Because we're going to find more stories just like this one, stories that prove that sometimes, the darkest storms bring the brightest blessings. Thanks for watching.